Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if you're new here, it's lovely to have you on this corner. I share a lot of insight about being a virtual assistant, my virtual assistant journey, being an online business manager, about my virtual assistant recruitment, contract sometimes. And I have a lot of insight to share, so do not forget to subscribe. And if you like this video, do not forget to actually press it. Sometimes you may like a video and you forget to actually hit the like button. So do that. And for the comments, you can leave me any questions in the comments. You can leave me any insight you have to add, because I'm only human. Sometimes I may miss some things when on the topics that I'm talking on. Okay, the topics that I'm talking about. Okay, so if you watch a video about a certain topic, about anything, and you feel like I missed something, you can always leave it in the comments. But if you have anything like a complaint or maybe a disappointment to express, I'd advise you to send that over to my email, because I think my email is somewhere. If you go to my channel, my email is somewhere. Send those to the email, because when you leave them in the comments, it's easy to invite hate. Okay, let's be kind to each other. So let's grow together, and welcome again. Do not forget to subscribe. Do not forget to like this video and any of my other videos, and do not forget to comment. And so today this video is about just a get to know me video for my community. Okay, for my community, that is. And so I thought about an introduction video, introducing myself, my virtual assistant journey. And I came up with this idea where I just invited people in a Google document. Okay, I invited I think 10. Let me just check. I have the document here. I invited 11. I invited 11 people who've spent the most time with me over the past 2 months. Okay, some of them are mentees, some of them are my friends. So these questions are just going to be all over the place, and I have a number of questions. So 57. Oh, wow, this is about to be a longest video. And I can see Nandi, I can see your red button here. So Nandi is actually still editing, but hey, we'll still let's let's go. So question number 1, let's dive into it. And something you should know about me is I'm long-winded. Okay, so I might post this video as a podcast, because 57 questions and my brain, it's going to be a long one. Okay, so the first one is, I noticed the tattoo on your wrist. Okay, what does it say, and what's the story behind it? Okay, interesting. First question, who even wrote this? Okay, so we are just diving in. So the tattoo on my wrist, I'm assuming she's talking about this one. Okay, so the tattoo on my wrist is actually Romans chapter 7 verse 15, and it says, I do not understand what I do, because what I want to do I do not do, and I do what I hate. Okay, so it's basically just the fight between the mind, the body, and the soul. Okay, and I actually have 6 tattoos. Since I'm answering the question on tattoos, I have 6 tattoos. This is the first one. The next one is just here in Love Infinity. This was just basically a bonus tattoo. Okay, I also have this Capricorn, which was my first tattoo. Actually, I have this because I was born on the night of first. So I was born on the 2nd of January 1996. So yeah, this is, I'm a Capricorn through and through. Actually, if you ever read any quality about a Capricorn, okay, just know it applies to me. Okay, and I also have a very large tattoo. I don't know if I can unbutton my shirt. I have the largest one, and also my first one. I got the 2 on the same day. It was the largest one. It's actually a lighthouse, and it's a lighthouse because basically to me it's like a beacon of hope. Okay, because the longest journey anyone can ever be in, like the longest journey, like literal journey, okay, is like the journey that you go on in a sea, or maybe it's water. Okay, the sea is the longest journey you can ever go to. Okay, go on. Okay, and so the lighthouse just represents you're almost there. Okay, when you locate it, okay, our journey is almost to an end. So it's a beacon of hope. It's a beacon of hope. So basically, if I can put it in, maybe like, it's just basically my version of light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, and then I have another tattoo over here. It says Ohana. So Ohana is just Hawaiian for family, and I think family has been the one thing that has brought me a lot of happiness in this life, and it's also been the very one thing that has broken my heart the most. Okay, so hence the Ohana just on top of the left side where my heart is meant to be. You get the gist. Okay, and I have another one, 19th of October 2020. Yeah, and so that is just a day that should never repeat itself for me. That is, okay, it's like things happened on that specific day that I do everything in my power. It's basically just a reminder this day should not repeat itself. So I do everything in my power to stop that day from repeating itself again. And as you can see, just one question took me almost 5 minutes to answer. I'm so sorry for the person watching this, but oh my god. Okay, so question number 2 is, what is the most recent disagreement or fight you've had? I think it has to be with my sister. I don't think it's an disagreement. I think it's just a miscommunication and misunderstanding. I think we were talking about my little sister, and then, I think she misunderstood some of the things that I was saying, and that was that. Okay, when were you the happiest in your life? I think personally, the happiest I've ever been in my life is actually in 2013. I was a candidate. I don't think I even remember what was making me happy that year. I was just free and happy. It was the last year of high school, and I was really happy. But professionally, it has been last year, 2025. I think 2025 meant a lot to my virtual assistant business, because it was the first year that I actually felt like being a virtual assistant was making a difference in my life and in my client's life. I think it's the first time that I looked back and I was like, okay, this is how far I've come, and this is how much I've accomplished. Okay, so what season of your life do you miss the most? I don't think I miss any season of my life the most. Okay, but I have a feeling that I'll miss the one I'm in. Okay, this season, I have a feeling I'll miss this one. Okay, what's the one thing you're still figuring out? Okay, that has to be, I think I'm still figuring a lot of things out, but if it's something that is relevant and something significant that I'm still figuring out, it has to be something around like being child-free and getting married, because I'm 30. And so I think I've decided, I know I don't want kids, and I know I don't want to get married, but I think once in a while I get this moment, so maybe just waves of thoughts where I'm like, what if I actually want them? But I think that is just, the conditioning doing its work, the conditioning as women in general. So that is the one significant thing that I'm still figuring out. Okay, what's a belief you had 5 years ago that completely changed? Oh, that's a lot of them, but most of the biggest one is actually around money. 5 years ago, I actually thought money is evil, the whole, rich people do this, rich people do that, and all. So the one belief that completely changed is my version, like my belief and my approach and how I view money and having money and getting money, Yeah, because I grew up poor, and we had beliefs about rich people that it made me scared of money. So that belief changed, and right now I embrace money. I love money. Okay, I know it's okay to have as much money as I want. Okay, it's okay to have as much money. It doesn't really do anything to my personality. It just makes me free. Money actually makes me free. Okay, what's something hard you're grateful happened to you? Okay, this is actually an interesting one. Something that is hard that I'm also grateful happened to me. I think I'm just going to answer this professionally, because personally there's a lot of them. My journey has never been simple. I think I've mentioned this before, especially on TikTok, that I grew up that poor. I was a sponsored kid in high school. So personally, I think you can just tell I had a really difficult life. But professionally, I think it was losing my first client, because as a virtual assistant, I had this client back in 2022, and they were, how can I say this? I was an executive VM, and I made a lot of mistakes, and it was a very misaligned position. And so I ended up losing them because I got comfortable. I was not upskilling, and they wanted more from me, but I did not have the skills. I did not even believe in myself enough to have the skills. So when I lost them, I had to start over. Okay, so in 2023, I basically just started acting like someone who's never worked with anyone. And that is when I learned a lot about upskilling. I learned about how personal development affects your virtual assistant journey. I learned a lot, just from that losing a client. So that is the one hard thing. And it was really hard, by the way. I got depressed and moved back home, by the way, okay, because of that. And so it was very hard. That time was very hard. But just by getting depressed, moving back home, starting over, I got to learn a lot about where I wanted my virtual assistant business to go and who I wanted to become as a virtual assistant. Okay, and so what's one thing younger you would be proud of? Almost everything. Younger me was all over the place. She did not know how to be herself. She did not know a lot of things. So younger me would be really proud of everything about. But if I were to pick one thing younger me would be proud of, is the fact that I know how to communicate, especially during conflict. That is something younger me did not know how to do. Everything about, I was a very angry child. I think that mostly stems from the fact that I was also a parentified child. So that is a topic for another day. But younger me will be proud of me for knowing how to communicate, healthy communication, that is. Okay, what is something you wish more people asked you about? Okay, that's a little quirky. Something I wish more people asked me about. I think my passions, the things that I'm passionate about. Sometimes I want to talk about them, but since I tend to make content for virtual assistants and content around being a virtual assistant and remote work, sorry. Yeah, people don't ask me about my personal life, but I don't want them to ask me about my personal life. I just want them to ask me about my passions. Okay, if you had to choose one skill to use for the rest of your virtual assistant career, what would it be and why? Wow, this is just another great one. I think I'd choose community management. Okay, and I think I'd choose community management because I'll give a number of reasons. As a virtual assistant, as an OBM also, I've learned that the type of businesses I personally worked with, that is online service businesses, most of them scale to communities. Okay, a coach can easily scale into a community, an author can easily create a community. Okay, a mentor can easily scale into a community. Okay, a course creator has a community. Okay, and so if I were to pick one skill, because almost every single thing in the type of businesses I work with tend to grow into communities. So if I'm a community manager, then all of them are just coming to me anyway. Okay, and also there's a lot of skills that you need for community management in general. You need I still get to talk to people every single day. I still get to handle the onboarding, because for them to get to a community they have to be somewhere. So I'll still be using my automation skills, onboarding them into the community. I'll still be talking to them every single day because the community has to be active. I'll still be doing client communication. So the community management has a lot of general skills inside it, and so I'd pick community management as the one skill. What's one VS skill you think is underrated? Okay, I'd say communication. And I think I was mentioning this for one of my mentees, that communication is it's not words. Okay, communication is not just emails. Communication is almost everything. Okay, so basically communication as a virtual assistant is how you present yourself. Okay, you communicate with your portfolio, you communicate with your resume, you communicate in words, you communicate in your introduction video, you communicate in your social media profiles, you communicate in your content, you communicate in the emails, the obvious ones. There's like almost 20 ways in which you communicate as a virtual assistant. So the one VS skill that I think is underrated is communication, because most people think communication is just sending emails. But communication is everything, every single thing that you do as a VA, especially, that clients or other people can see. That is you communicating. Okay, and so you need to be really careful about what you're putting out there, because that is you communicating your value, communicating your position, communicating your skills, and all those. Okay, question number 13. Oh, we are doing this. What kind of client brings out your best work? Okay, the type of client that brings out my best work is, I think, the type of client that gives me room, a less controlling type of client that gives me room to just be, because I'm very strategic and I think I spot gaps. I think in steps. Okay, and I think about, if this doesn't go there, that I already think about what is like right now for all my clients. I've already thought about like the next 3 weeks. Okay, I've already thought about what we are doing and what we want it to do for the business, and the next 3 weeks how I'll communicate. And I've already stated down things that I've noticed. Okay, I may not even end up telling the clients that, but the clients that bring out my best work are the clients that they delegate, or maybe just they trust me enough to know that I can really deliver, and I deliver the best way for those specific clients. Okay, and sometimes I talk to them once a month, by the way. Those are the best clients that bring out the best in me. Okay, what's a lesson from recruitment that I still use every single day? Okay, that the person on the other end of the recruitment process is also a person. Okay, and I'm answering this as someone who's been both hired as a virtual assistant and someone who's also been part of a talent acquisition team hiring virtual assistants. Okay, the person on the other end of the call, the person on the other end of the communication is a person, is a human. Okay, and so if that is the one lesson that I carry. So whenever I'm communicating, whenever I'm having conversations in the DM, whenever I'm sending the emails, I always remember that the person on the other end is a human. Okay, so do not put them on a pedestal. Do not try to overdo it. Do not sound like a robot. Just be human about it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a great lesson to always have. Okay, so if you're a virtual assistant who's applying to something, you're a virtual assistant who's like doing outreach, remember that the person on the other end of the communication is a human. So communicate with them as one. Okay. And so what's one business mistake I'd never make again? I think, I don't know. I think this is almost like it will limit me. Okay. But the business mistake I'd never make again is probably just working a tech. I don't know. I have a tech client. So I think it's just something around but hey, the one business mistake, let me just go to the second best because I can't really, it's a long one, the first one. So the second biggest mistake I'd never make as a virtual assistant is, try the whole delegating, because it really made my work as a virtual assistant very difficult and it made me overwhelmed and overworked. I tried to subcontract clients' work, and I that's when I realized I really hate doing it. I don't like it. I'd rather just train you to get your own clients, or maybe I'd rather also maybe communicate with the client and let them know I don't have space, but I can connect you to someone really great. I can refer the clients, I can refer the VA, but subcontracting work really made my life very difficult. Okay, because I was doing the work and I was paying the VA. It was a lot of things because client expected results that only I can get. Okay, and I know that sounds cocky, but hey. Okay, what business? Oh yeah, what's the most unexpected thing about being an online business manager? How much strategy? Okay, how much mental load you actually need to, that being an online business manager has. As an OBM, you're basically planning the whole year for a business. Okay, and also something else that is the most unexpected as an online business manager is how easy it is to build businesses for your clients, especially the type of businesses that I personally work with, online service businesses. It's very easy to look back at a business where I'm working as an online business manager and just see me and not see my client at all. Okay, so what the most unexpected thing about being an OBM is how easy it is to build someone else's business, okay, from scratch, okay, and not even get the credits for it. Okay, what's something you've outgrown? I've outgrown a lot of things. But I'd say something I've outgrown is just not being intentional. How can I put it? I'm looking for one word that can explain this. Not being present, or maybe just doing things for the sake of it. I've outgrown that. If you ask me any single thing, including making this video, I have a reason for doing every single thing. And sometimes it can be exhausting, but it has made my life really, advanced. It has developed, it has helped me with personal development. I think that is it. So what are you protecting your peace from these days? Oh wow, that's a lot of things actually, but the most things that I'm protecting my peace from, I think it would be men. If I'm just being honest, I'm protecting my peace from men these days a lot. I don't work with men. I've only worked with one male client, by the way. Yeah, so I'm protecting my peace from men in general, just men, including some including men in my family, men from my family. Yeah, that is okay. So what's something that instantly makes my day better? Rest, having a nap, resting, just switching off all my screens and just existing. So rest makes my day better. What is a tiny thing that makes you irrationally happy? I think it's food. Okay, tiny thing that makes my day irrationally happy. I think it's food, or maybe just sometimes it's just a random realization that I was considered. Just I think sometimes I just have these little memories where this person actually noticed something. Yeah, being noticed, being recognized. So that is the one tiny thing that makes my day. It makes me irrationally happy. Question number 21. What's one thing you're learning to let go of? Wow, this is actually a good one. I'm learning to let go of, both professionally and personally. Basically just people expectation. I'm learning to detach from some things, I get attached easily, okay? And I think I've mentioned this before. I care about the things I care about, and I don't care about the things I don't care about. And so the things that I care about, I tend to have a difficulty of letting go and attaching myself to them. And so I'm learning to let go of people's expectation and just from detaching. Because if you're raised the way I was raised, it's not something that you can do. It's not a one-off. It's something that you just do or learn how to do over time. Okay, question number 22. What's your comfort show, comfort meal, and comfort habit? Wow. Okay, you guys really thought about this. Okay, thank you, by the way, for the questions. Okay, so my comfort show. I watch a lot of K-dramas, okay? And so my comfort show is actually has to be a K-drama, but I do have English. I think right now, at the moment, my comfort show is either another Miss O. Yeah, it has to be another Miss O, or, When Life Gives You Tangerines. That is my comfort show, okay? And also for English TV shows, I think it would be This Is Us, because I think that is just the English version of, When Life Gives You Tangerines. So I think it has a lot to do, maybe with my mother. So yeah, those are my comfort shows, or rather my relationship with my mother and my family. That is for This Is Us. So those are my two comfort shows right now. And so comfort meal, I think my comfort meal is just eggs or milk. A lot of proteins. I tend to just love proteins, whether it's plant proteins, animal proteins. Aside from meat, I actually don't like meat. I don't like fish. I don't like chicken. So maybe plant-based proteins, that is beans, groundnuts have to be my comfort meal ever, So comfort habit. Interesting. My comfort habit is actually, I don't know why I feel embarrassed saying this, My comfort habit is actually doing nothing. My comfort habit is actually getting to a moment, because I think I've mentioned this. I overthink, I strategize, I think in steps, and some things make me really miserable. Okay, there's a lot of mental load in the work I do. Okay, and even I'm quite sensitive as a person, by the way. And so my comfort habit is those moments when I've been trying, and then so I have this habit of just letting everything go. Some people may call them giving up. Okay, and as someone who mentors people, it's easy for my mentees to think I'm giving up. That's why I feel embarrassed saying this, but it's not me giving up. Okay, I try, and then I get to a moment where I just decide to do nothing. And I think I'm doing it right now, because at the beginning of this year, I was doing a lot of outreach because I only had one client, and then I got clients, and then I now the client that I had in January, I almost stopped working with them. Okay, so I moved from one client in January to having 4 clients to now having 3 clients. The things changes, because one of the clients was actually a 3-month, one of the clients was a 3-month contract, right? And so I'm getting to a moment where I'm not doing outreach anymore. Sometimes I just decide to not do it because I've done it for so long. So my comfort habit is just stopping something that I've been doing for a while and just letting it simmer, If you could, question number 23, if you could relive 1 year of your life, which would it be? I think I'd relive 2023. As I've mentioned before, I was depressed in around end of 2022, a better part of 2023. A lot happened in that year. I got depressed. I sold everything I owned. I was living in Nakuru. I moved back home, that is in Siaya, and then, a lot happened that year. I lost a client that year. And I wish I could relive that 1 year and just give myself some grace, be kinder to myself, because I feel like I would have gotten out of that situation easier, or maybe sooner, if I was just kind to myself, but I was really hard on myself back then. Okay, what's a decision that changed your life? I think that is just deciding to be a virtual assistant. That really changed my life. Okay, what's the most spontaneous thing I've ever done? I've done a lot of spontaneous thing, actually. In 2020, during Corona, we actually did this spontaneous thing where we went to Dubai. Okay, that was that. And also, I think the most spontaneous things I've done are actually trips. I do a lot of spontaneous trips where I just decide, okay, let's go here, let's go there. I think that is also why I love being a virtual assistant, because I can do that. I can afford that. I can just decide, okay, this weekend I'm going for a staycation in Diani. I can decide that. I can just say, okay, today it's Wednesday, but I can get a flight on today is Tuesday, today is Thursday. I can get a flight to, visa-free country. And that is also something else about me. I've never visited a country that required visa of me, because most of my travels are spontaneous, and also I just hate the humiliation of seeking a visa to just visit a country, And so most of the countries I tend to visit are like Malaysia, visa-free for Kenya and South Africa, East African countries, that is a lot of like Singapore, Philippines. I visit a lot of visa-free, the Bahamas. So if it's visa-free, I'll spontaneously visit it. Okay, so what's something you've changed your mind about recently? I don't know if I have this, something I've changed my mind about recently. Okay, I think that would be, I think that it's about my business, my virtual assistant business. So something I've changed my mind about recently is my approach when it comes to virtual mentoring virtual assistants. So it's still in the works, so but I've changed my mind about how I was approaching it and how I want to be approaching it. Okay, so what's your most controversial work opinion? Okay, my most controversial work opinion is I'm just going to say, especially in terms of the businesses I work with, that most businesses have virtual assistants who are basically doing business coach work. Okay, so as a virtual assistant, it's very easy to find yourself, knowing the business better than the business owner. Okay, and so my controversial work opinion is probably VAs sometimes are more important than business coaches, but I don't think that is a conversation anyone wants to start having. Okay, what's a hill you'll die on as a virtual assistant or as a virtual assistant mentor? I'll die on the hill that soft skills are always better to have than technical skills. I'll die on that one. Okay, what's your biggest red flag in clients? Okay, my biggest red flag in clients is control issues. Okay, insecurities, because being a virtual assistant is actually, it's also personal, and you may not know this when you're taking the course, you may not know this when you're doing outreach, but being a virtual assistant is also personal because you're dealing with people directly and you're dealing with them on a personal level as well. Okay, and so a red flag in client is anything that can be a red flag in a relationship. It's going to be a red flag in a client. Okay, that is someone who's controlling, someone who has insecurities, someone, a lot of that. Okay, and so next question is, what's the pettiest thing that annoys me? Okay, I don't know if it's petty, but something that annoys me is someone, especially in people, that is, the pettiest thing is not recognizing, or maybe just realizing, that someone is not observant, someone is not aware of the environment. That really annoys me, because how do you not know? And I think I've had an issue with my sister recently. It's not that recent, but there's this one. I live with my little sister, and there's this one moment she asked me, she found me cleaning our bathroom, and she was like, so this thing it's being cleaned, She was really surprised, and I was like, so every time when we go shopping, I buy toilet cleaner. Where do you think that goes? Do you think I drink it or anything? You really, especially as a woman, you need to be aware of your environment, and that really, it really annoys me when someone is not aware of their environment, is not aware of the people around them, is not aware of themselves. It really annoys me. I don't know if it's petty, but that annoys me a lot. Okay, what's something people will be surprised to learn about you? Okay, people will be surprised to learn about me, especially people who are relating to people who are engaging with me, especially since 2024, 2025, 2026. People who are engaging with me right now, they'll be surprised to learn how mean I can actually be, because I think when I'm communicating, especially most of the people I communicate right now with, VAs and my family, I'm more composed, I'm more grounded. So something people will be surprised to learn about me is that I can actually be mean when I decide to be. I just choose not to be, And then something else they can be surprised to learn about me is how intense I can be. But I think some people can just sense it from the video. I can be really intense if I want to be, But a lot of my relationships, a lot of the things are just me being an adult about everything and just, be empathizing about the other person, empathizing with the other person and the situation, okay? And then just thinking, if this were happening to me, this is what I would want to be, and that is how I respond, and that is how I handle situations. Okay, so what's one question you wish someone would ask me? I think I've mentioned this, right? I would wish someone to ask me about my passions, because I have passions outside of being a virtual assistant. And sometimes I see content and I feel like, okay, I want to start making this content. And then they're like, oh yeah, this is going to be to clash or maybe be controversial with my virtual assistant business. And so I just decide to keep my ideas. I have a lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts that I want to share, but I keep them, just with myself and have conversations with my friends about them because, I make VA content. Okay. Question number 33. Oh, we are moving. What is your biggest fear? That is my biggest fear. Not reaching my potential, My biggest fear is not going as far as I could have gone if I were just, honest with myself, if I would just be able to push myself, and my boundaries and my fears and my traumas and everything. So my biggest fear is not reaching my potential, okay? And especially it being my fault, it being not me not being able to get out of my way and reach my potential. That is it. So what habits have you found help you to be more productive? Okay, time blocking. It really helps me to be more productive. That is one. And then two, another habit that I've found is just working with clients. I think it's a habit at this point. Working with clients whose businesses I'm aligned with. Yeah. So that has really helped me be more productive, because when I'm doing something, when I'm working, I'm doing something that makes a difference to me. Okay, according to me, my perception of the business is that it makes a difference. Okay, even though maybe it might not be making sense at that point, but I know it can make a difference of that. Okay, that is another habit that I've formed. Okay, why did you decide to be a mentor or a VA coach? I think my heart goes out to VAs, especially who are just in the point of their journey where they're starting out, because I think it still stems back to the mistake that I mentioned I made, back in 2022, that mistake of not growing, mistake of not, and a lot of theory that is being taught is not realistic to the virtual assistant industry when it comes to execution, And so I decided to be a VA mentor because I want to change someone's journey. I want to be an influence to someone's journey, so it can be a little, it can just suck a little less, So yeah, that is the one reason that made me decide to be a VA mentor. And then something else I think I got a lot of requests because I just started making videos, And anytime I'd make a video, anytime I'd write a LinkedIn post, people just felt encouraged and motivated for my journey, and they felt like I could walk their journey with them. Okay, so a lot of it was from the outside, but mostly I decided to actually be a mentor because my heart really goes out, to virtual assistants. There's a lot of things, Yeah, just giving them grace and just letting them know that they're doing their best. And yeah. Okay, my biggest fear. How is your relationship with God? Complicated. Okay, because I was raised in an Adventist family. Okay, still an Adventist. I still declare myself an Adventist, even though I rarely go to church. Okay, so my relationship with God is complicated, and I think it's mostly has to do with my childhood. Okay, I was raised by a man who was more committed to God than he was committed to his family. And so, you know how that goes. So my relationship with God is complicated. But I do believe in God. I do pray to him. Like, I say a lot of little tiny prayers in a day. I can say like 100 tiny prayers in a day. I'm just quiet. I'm like, God, I hope my so-and-so, like, so maybe my mentee, like today, my mentee has discovery call. And I'm like, okay, God, I hope the discovery call goes, I do pray to him, But when it comes to complicated relationship, I also went to high school, like Luguru Girls High School. I think that made my relationship with God even more complicated because, the religion that I grew up with, the religion that I saw in high school, the religion that I experienced, I personally, in my personal life, yeah, complicated really describes it, okay? Who inspires you? Okay, that is interesting. Do you know that someone that inspires me, I don't think I have people. Does it count if there are people who inspire me to not be that, I think I see it a lot, especially when I'm working with clients. I just see how they run their business. I see what they're doing, because online service businesses tend to like almost seem the same, okay? So the people who inspire me are mostly my clients, okay? They inspire me to be something or to not be something. Like I have this one client that I'm working with right now, She's a lady, I think in her 50s or 60s. I'm not sure about her age, but she really inspires me. I want to be that grounded as a person, And she's very like, yeah, she has her fears. She has, a life that she's lived, but maybe it's just wisdom that comes with age, But she really does inspire me. I have this client that really inspires me, Every single day when we're having a conversation, I'm like, I want to be as grounded as she is, Yeah. So one fun fact about you. I'm among the first of the last millennials. So basically, I was just born on the 1st of January, and 1996 being the last year of the millennial. So I'm among the first of the last millennials. That is a fun fact about me. 3 random topics you're passionate about. Oh, wow, someone finally asked. Okay, so 3 random topics. It'd be 1 is personal development, especially how it affects your virtual assistant journey. Okay, and personal development in general, and how much you really need to be honest with, and how much you need to get out of your own way. So personal development is the first random topic I'm passionate about. The second one is mental health, and I've mentioned before I was very depressed back in 2022, 2023, and almost wasn't present for this earth. And I think at one point, especially in my life, especially like in my early to mid 20s, I just wanted to go as far as 30, and now that I'm 30, I'm looking back. I think mental health is a topic that I'm really passionate about because I've been there. Okay, and then topic number 3 would be women empowerment. Okay, and I think topics around like misogyny, patriarchy, and women empowerment and supporting women, that is something I'm passionate about. I can write essays on those 3 topics especially. Okay, I can write books on those 3 topics really. Okay, so the 3 random topics are personal development, mental health, and women empowerment. Question number 40. Oh wow, we're doing this. Where do you see the virtual assistant industry in 3 years? I'd see the virtual assistant industry, it's growing, obviously, okay? Because as social media is growing, as the internet is growing, as AI is here, virtual assistant roles, they're growing, okay? But where I see it in 3 years, actually a good question, is the role is going to expand even more, okay? Expand beyond being a VA, okay? And if you've been a VA for a number of years and you're watching this, you'd agree with me that back in 2022, 2023, being a virtual assistant was something lesser, okay? It has less responsibilities as compared to right now in 2026, because when you look at like around 2025, automation started coming in, okay? Because right now it's very hard to find like a role that doesn't require automations, okay? And right now it's even expanding to something like project management. Like clients expect you to be able to manage a team, they expect you to be able to manage projects. The role is expanding. So where I see it in 3 years, they might still be calling it a virtual assistant, but the responsibilities are just growing by the day, okay? So I see it really like the scope expanding even more. Okay, your skin is bright even without makeup, so what do you use? I'd never take skin advice from someone like me, because I've never experienced any skin issues. I've never had acne, I've never had like, is it pimples? I've never had any of those, okay? I think the farthest I go is just, the menstrual pimples, or maybe just hormonal, or maybe sometimes if my diet is out of the way, or maybe just cortisol, okay? But I've never struggled with skin, okay? Like right now I'm not wearing any makeup, and you can see I'm not wearing any makeup, I'm not wearing anything on my face really. I just woke up and I washed my face, and that is it. So I would not take skin advice for someone like me, especially if you're asking this because you want to try something for your skin, okay? My skin has never had an issue, and so that is not a topic I'd talk about, especially since people would want to take advice and maybe they're struggling with acne. It's not something I resonate with, so I stay away from speaking on things like those, okay? Do you have someone or people you never want to meet? Yes, a lot of them, a whole bunch of them, anyone that was in my life before 2023, I never want to meet them, okay? And it's not that they're bad people. I think, when we finish, let me just tell the story, okay? So primary, I don't have much to say about primary. I think we were really that poor, okay, really poor. And I don't think I love telling that story because yeah, we were just, so I don't have much to say about primary. But then high school was a great year actually. But after high school, we had this WhatsApp group. Okay, yes, WhatsApp was just getting, to Africa in 2013. And so we had this WhatsApp group, and I think my life in high school was just, regular, pretty much, anyone who went to Lugulu, anyone who I think it was just normal, And so I think it was in first year, second semester, so that makes it 2015. Was it 2015? I think it was 2014. This lady, I think this woman, who was, she was our class prefect. And when we were in high school, an incident happened where I think the school principal from Lugulu, anyone who was in Lugulu, I think in 2013, 2012, 2011, the year was 2011, actually, I was in Form 2. There's an incident where someone told the principal that people were like buying loaf from the canteen and reselling. And so I thought it was just a normal incident. It didn't bother me much because it didn't involve me, and I tend to just mind my business when things don't involve me, okay? And so that incident happened back in Form 2. And then in 20, like after high school, that is 2013, 2014, 2015, I think at the beginning of 2015, that is, I get this message from the lady who was our class prefect back then, she was just basically telling me, we were having a conversation, I think. Yeah, she was in 2 at the moment. So she was just telling me that, like, you can just be honest, you can tell me, you can let me know right now, you know, was it you that sent that letter to the principal, you know? And I was like, no, that wasn't me. Like, did you think it was me? And she tells me that everyone like actually thought it was me. And I was like, wow. So including my, like, no one ever asked me that, you know, but it's actually finally my high school made a lot of sense. You know, like the experiences, how people are treating me, it was now making a lot of sense at that time after she told me that, because people are technically people are avoiding me. I remember we went to Meru in Form 3, that is in 2022, for nationals, music festivals, and people were actually avoiding me. So turns out this whole time they were avoiding me because they thought that I was a mole for the principal, because they were convinced that I'm the one who wrote that, you know, that letter. And so I started to wonder, I thought I had friends in high school, you know. Some of them I was still speaking to. And so none of them ever asked me directly. And so that's why I didn't even know it was a thing. You know, I was that oblivious about it. And so it made me realize that I did not, in fact, have friends. So I just stopped talking to all of them. I've never spoken to anyone since then, you know, including the lady who was asking me that. I just stopped responding to her. And that is how I stopped talking to every single person I went to high school with. And then for university, back in 2023, again, I've mentioned before, I was depressed. A lot was going on at home. I could not lean on my family because they were going through it at the same time with me. And I remember also it being almost like being around the same thing, you know? It's just the same thing. Like, I thought I had friends, you know? And so it was a lot of, for 2023, it was just a lot of rumors and a lot of misdirections and a lot of misconceptions. I thought they were my friends, but turns out they weren't. And so even though I don't have a lot of friends, I think I have like just 2 VA friends right now. But at least I know I have 2 VA friends right now. And if they don't show up for me personally, I'll just be okay with it because they're my VA friends again, okay? And so right now, even though I don't have friends, I am aware I don't have friends. So if in case of anything, I would not expect anything from anyone. But back then, I thought I had friends. So when that happened back in 2023, I just stopped talking to every single person I went to university with, and that was that. And so people, I never want to meet anyone from my high school and anyone from my university. Actually, in fact, let me just tell you the story. On Saturday, right on this Saturday, I'm recording this on a Monday. Also, I'm recording it because it's a bank holiday and I don't have much work. 2 of my clients are from Ireland. Yeah, that one. And today is a bank holiday over there, so I don't have much work, like maybe just light admin, you know. That's why I'm recording this video today. And so on Saturday, that is on 30th of May, I attended this event where I met one person, I think from high school. I met one person from high school because it was a group of 300 women. I'm bound to meet someone I know, right? I met one person from high school and one person from campus. They were not on my course, that is, but I did meet them. And they were like, one of them, like the lady from I saw in university, I was actually really skinny. Okay, I grew up tall and skinny, you know. Right now I have some flesh in me, you know. I'm woman like, okay. And so she was like, oh my God, you're so skinny. Like, you used to be so skinny. And I was like, oh my God, I could not afford food back then, you know, consistent food. And she thought that was mean. And so that conversation just ended that way. She was like, yeah, it wasn't that deep. It was in fact that deep. Okay. And so, yeah, I never want to meet them. I don't have an issue with meeting them. I actually see them a lot on the streets, but they just look at me like, again, putting on some weight has really worked on my favor in that stance. Okay. And so I see a lot of them, especially in Nairobi town. Sometimes I'm walking and I see a lot of them and they just look at me like I'm familiar, but they can't really place me. Okay. And so, yeah, I've gained like 20 kgs. I've put on 20 kgs since they last saw me, and that works in my favor. So since I don't want to meet them anyway, I never say hi, and they just stay there confused, looking at me like I'm familiar, like it's me, like it's not me. And so, yeah, let's move on. Oh, no. Some people, yeah. This one just wrote it in caps, so I better answer it. If you were to pick a moment that made you who you are, which one would it be? One moment that made me who I am today. I think it's the very moment that I decided to become a virtual assistant, because becoming a virtual assistant and losing that first client and learning about how I have to develop and learning about how I have to get out of my own way, learning how I have to work with myself instead of working against myself, that really made me who I am today. Okay, it made me more mature. Maybe I was just 27, maybe 26. So yeah, that is that. But being a virtual assistant is the moment that made me who I am today. Okay, question number 44. What is one thing you had to come to terms with recently? Haven't I answered this? Oh, what is one thing I had to come to terms with recently? I'd say is that people are different from me. Okay, I think I always know people are different, but then it seems like I have these expectations of people to, to react to me, or maybe to react to things the way I personally do. Okay, and so whenever someone does something different, whenever someone approaches something differently, I literally have to be conscious about it, conscious enough to tell myself, okay, it's not how I would have handled it, but it doesn't mean that their way is wrong. It's just different, So that is something I have had to come to terms with recently, because people are just people, people are them and I am me. And so how I see it is not exactly how they may see it, and that is okay. Who is your favorite content creator? My favorite content creator, I have 3, okay? But the one that I listen to every single day is Unpunishable Woman on TikTok. I love her content so very much, okay? And then someone else is Olive Orao, and then let me think. Then I have the Kenyan Juice Box, that is Iveta Kinyi on TikTok as well. I listen to those 3 a lot, because I think TikTok is the only platform that I go there personally, if I'm being honest. Actually, I don't think I go on LinkedIn. I don't have a favorite creator on LinkedIn. I only go on Facebook to do outreach, LinkedIn to do outreach and reach out to clients, and connect with clients. IG, it's the same. So TikTok is the only place where I actually go for pleasure, not work. Okay, not business, that is. And so those 3, Unpunishable Woman on TikTok, the Kenyan Juice Box, Jukes Box, Iveta Kenya, that is on TikTok as well, and also Olive on TikTok. I tend to resonate a lot with those 3. Okay, what's your go-to podcast? Recently, I just got into by Adele Onyango, and that is Legally Clueless. I just got into it, and I've been learning a lot, especially I think the last episode, it was talking about women, menopause, female health, like PCOS, a lot of hormones, and I learned a lot from that. So yeah, my go-to podcast at the moment is Legally Clueless. Okay, question number 47. What frustrates you the most online? And this is going to be a little okay, it's going to be, on the other end of it, but what actually frustrates me the most online right now is when people can't really mind their business. And I know that kind of goes against the whole point of online, because people do put their business out online. But what I mean is, when people can't mind their business is when the creator, when content is literally obviously not made for you, and then someone goes I'm going to use something that I belong to. I tend to split content, or maybe just creators, or maybe topics, in terms of where I belong and where I do not belong. Okay, I made a TikTok last year about it, so I'm just going to just illustrate. Okay, so let's say someone is talking about being child free, and then you'll find people with children in the comments talking about how happy they are with their children. Okay, or maybe people with children are making content about what their life is, their struggles, their everything, and then you'll find someone who's child free going to their comments and talking about, thank God I chose not to have children. This is not about you right now. If I'm making content about virtual assistants, only virtual assistants should be in my comments. Okay, if I'm making content about being child free, only people who are child free should be in my comments. Okay, sharing the experiences. If I'm making content about kids, only people with kids should be in my comments, not someone who says, this is why I choose not to have children. I'm like, what are you doing even here? Yes, the content came to my For You page as well, but what exactly is your comment doing here? So that is something that, it frustrates me online, when people can't just stay in their lane. We have lanes, okay? And you can belong in 10 different lanes, and it's okay to not belong in each and every one of those lanes, okay? Or maybe just someone is saying about how their relationship with their parent is, and then someone comes, someone just from somewhere, oh my God, I thank God for my mother. Go thank your mother and your God somewhere else. Just let someone share their experience without you coming and adding, salt on top and making it seem like the experience was even maybe worse than it was just because yours was better. Okay, I think that whole thing just frustrates me online. If you are not making VA content, what other type of content will you be making? I think I'd be making really controversial content, especially about the patriarchy and misogyny, because I have a lot of strong ideas and strong stance when it comes to that. So I'd be making something for women. So basically women empowerment. I'd be making feminism type of content because I'm a feminist, but I'm not just how can I put this? I'm actually a feminist, but I'm not them. What is the word again? Yeah, I would be making feminist type of content. I would be making maybe personal development content. Maybe right now, who knows? I could have been probably a coach already, personal branding. I have a lot of topics that I can passionately make content on. Okay, but I chose VA because it is the most low risk type of content, because I tend to have strong ideas. So I chose VA because it was a strong idea, yes, it was strong stance, yes, but it was the most low risk content I could make. Okay. Yeah. And also I think it's because let's just move on. What is the one type of client that's an obvious no and an obvious yes? Good one. Okay, an obvious yes is a woman whose brand or maybe whose business helps women. So that is an obvious yes to me. Business coaches for business women, for professional women, executive coach for professional women, midlife coach for midlife women going through midlife, relationship coach for women, any type, any female, type of business that targets females and includes, involves transformation or just females learning how to be themselves. That is my obvious yes. And then my obvious no, I'd say I just say it's a man. I'm just going to be honest. I think I look at my LinkedIn, especially I've trained my LinkedIn to only send me females. I surround myself with females a lot. And so an obvious no, I think it would be maybe a man, but not exactly. But my obvious no also would be something to do with appointment setting. Okay, I just don't like kissing ass. So that is that. What is one type of client you've never worked with but want to? I'd say a client from either Canada or Australia. I don't know much about those two markets. Okay, and I feel like the best way I tend to learn about clients and their markets, okay, is just by working with a client. And so I've worked with how can I say this? I've worked with a client from the US, so I tend to understand US and UK markets better. Worked with a client from Malta. I've worked with clients in Kenya, and so I understand these markets. And I've worked with a client who was both Kenyan, Nigerian. Okay, and so a client I would want to work with either from Canada or Australia. I would really like to understand their markets. Also in Dubai. Okay, and so your one, hear me out. That has to be Chris Brown. Yeah, I know I'm all for women and everything based on what he did to Rihanna, but I love his music, so that is my one, hear me out. Guilty pleasure. Interesting. Let me think about that. I've not been doing a lot of guilty pleasures recently, so guilty pleasure. Come on, D. I don't think it's a guilty pleasure. I'm just being honest. Okay, it would be K-dramas, but I don't think that's a guilty pleasure. So okay, pet peeve. People with no self-awareness. My favorite creator, I've mentioned that. My favorite creator is the Kenyan juice box. Okay, also Unpunishable Woman and Olive. Okay, as someone who engages in hiring, what is the first thing you notice from a CV of a great candidate? The first thing I noticed from a CV of a great candidate is how well they communicate. How well they communicate their value, how well they communicate their skills, how well they communicate, just how they've written their portfolio, or maybe just their resume, how they communicate. That is the first thing I notice from a CV of a candidate. And then the second thing I notice is attention to details. Okay, how detailed are they? Okay, you as a virtual assistant, you have to be detailed yet precise and concise. Okay, detailed yet clear, precise and concise. Okay, you give enough for someone to understand you without overwhelming them with information, and also give enough for someone to understand the value that you bring. Okay, you have to be able to do that in 1, 2, 3 sentences. Okay, if given free will, what will you change in your career journey? What I would change in my career journey? There's a lot of things I would change in my career journey, but given free will, I have two, for clients and for VAs. Okay, as a virtual assistant, I'll just change the entire virtual assistant courses out there. Okay, because most of them are just theoretical, and then they don't really apply to what is actually happening on the ground, and that is what virtual assistants are kind of expected to do by clients. Okay, and for clients, I would say what I would want to change in my career journey is I'd want to work with clients that we are more aligned in terms of personal development. Clients who actually understand that for that business to grow, especially since I work with online service businesses, I'd want to work with clients who are willing to grow as I, and they're also aware that I'm also growing as the business grows. Okay, I think those types of clients tend to be to have more grace for their clients, for me as their virtual assistant or OBM, and also for themselves. Okay, so clients who are in touch with themselves, and clients who are aware and self-conscious and self-aware just like me, and clients who are in touch with their personal development journey as well, because it does directly affect the business. So that is something I would want to change in my career journey, just to only work with those people, which can be really difficult because sometimes you never know, you just learn them as you go. Okay, I just got cut off, so let's proceed. I think I'm only left with 2 to 3 questions. Why do I feel like they're still adding questions on here? I had like 57, now I have 60. Anyway, so how do you handle overwhelm when working with clients? So how I handle overwhelm when working with clients is rest, a lot of rest, and I'm also very intentional about the type of businesses I'm working with. And since I'm experienced right now, I can afford that. Okay, I can afford to say no to a client if I feel like their business is not aligned to me. Okay, so if you're a beginner, so don't take that advice seriously. Okay, you'll get there when you get there. And so the next question, if you were to be something else, not a VA, what would you be? I'd probably be doing the same thing I was doing in university, that is being an engineer. I studied agricultural and biosystems engineering in university, so I'd probably be an engineer. But which brings us to question 59. Why did you walk away from engineering? I think I love engineering work. I think I'll practice engineering at some point in my life, especially as my own boss. Being an agricultural engineer, and agriculture being, the source of food, everything. I actually do a lot of research sometimes. I just sit on my computer and do a lot of research around modern agriculture, the machinery, how AI affects agriculture. I do a lot of research around that because I would want to use my degree at some point, So why did I walk away from engineering? It's just made me miserable. Okay, the people in engineering made me miserable, and by people I mean men. Okay, and because engineering, you tend to deal with a lot of men. I feel like in university was one of my most frustrating 5 years of my life. Okay, because I was in a class of in first year we were learning mostly the whole engineering department in first year, so it was like 100 of us and like 20 ladies, and then in our own agricultural engineering department, in our class we had like either 50 something men and only 5 ladies. Okay, and that made me really miserable. By the way, men make me miserable. Okay, they just have a way. And as someone who's very aware, as someone who's very intuition, I have like a very strong intuition. Okay, and someone who's very kind of smart, by the way, and very present. I am very also objective, and I notice a lot of things that I don't want to notice, and they make me miserable. So why did I walk away from engineering? I just looked around. I got this job, I looked around, and it was all men, and I was the only female in the team, in the company, that is, and I just didn't want to be around them. And I had their jokes on that specific day, their jokes, how they joke, how they speak, how they move, their audacity, and their entitlement, their entitlement to your opinion, their entitlement to, they have this also, there's this, how do I call it, it's a lot of things. I can speak a whole lot about this, but why did I walk away from engineering? Being around men all the time in that capacity made me miserable. Okay, so what do you think makes you a great virtual assistant? And that is our last question. Okay, I think all the things that I've mentioned, that also, like, what makes me a great virtual assistant is I'm very attentive to detail, actually. Okay, I'm very attentive to detail, and I've learned how to communicate. I'm still learning how to communicate. Okay, and something else that has made me a great virtual assistant is also the fact that I know how to tap into my human side, because as a VA, sometimes they can tell you, oh, it's all business. It's not all business. Okay. So I know how to tap into the relevant human aspects that I can, use for my virtual assistant. So what makes me a great VA? Attention to detail, communication, and being able to be a person about it. Okay, and that marks the end of our video. I feel like I haven't covered everything, but those are the questions that people want to know. Give the people what they want and everything. And so thank you for watching this video. I'm assuming that at least one of you has got to this point, because this is a long video. Okay, and so thank you for the questions. Also, the 10 people who took their time to give me the number of questions to make this video. Thank you so very much. Okay, so if you feel like you have any other more questions, I'm always open. Again, this is a YouTube channel, and I can always find time to answer more questions. So if you feel like there was something that you were curious about and I haven't covered it, you can always leave the question in the comments. Okay, I will respond to it. And also, thank you for watching this video again, and leave a comment. Don't forget to like it. Don't forget to subscribe. There is more where this come from, because I have a big personality. By the way, I have a big personality. That is something I can always say I'm very confident about. I have a big personality, and a very interesting one. But I think people tend to just see my virtual assistant and virtual assistant mentor side. Okay, I think being a virtual assistant is a kind of the least interesting thing about me, and that is something I confirmed this Saturday. By the way, I went to that event. I was a leader, and just being around women. It was just an event for women. Being around women and all those brands and all those everything, I just discovered that I confirmed that I do have a great personality, a very sociable one. Okay, and I'm also ambiverted. Being a VA made me introverted, and just being around people, I'm extroverted. So yeah, okay, I'm doing a whole lot other things about me. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. Okay, thank you for the questions, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and see you in the next one.